Lindsay, tell us who you are and what you do.
Hello, my name is Lindsay Dearing. I am originally from Jackson, Ohio, really small town in southern Ohio. I like to say that there is really only corn, cows, and Amish. I graduated high school in 2002 and went to a small town community college for about a semester and hated it. And school was never really my thing. And it was finals week, my first semester, and I got a business card in my school mailbox from an Army recruiter. I had no military in my family. I didn't know anything about it. I went in like a business interview and signed up for the Army that day and left 2 months later. And he said, "Where do you want to go? What do you want to do?" And I was like, "I don't know." And he was like, "You should be communications like me." And I was like, "Sure." And he was like, "How's Germany?" I was like, "Even better."
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so I was off. Yeah, really on a whim. And I tell you, it was the best decision I ever made in my entire life. No one thought I was going to make it. I was a small time beauty queen in my hometown. So everyone was like, "What? You're going in the army?" It was really funny. But I made it and I did great. And I learned pretty early on that as a woman, I was going to have to work about twice as hard as all of the men around me, which was fine. My mom taught me to work hard. I was in 4-H for 9 years, and I think that taught me a lot about hard work and responsibility. And I was fine with that. And so my first duty station was Germany. That was great. And I did a deployment to Afghanistan there, and we got attached to the 82nd Airborne Division. And I fell in love with the 82nd Airborne Division. And so I reenlisted to go to the 82nd. I wasn't airborne yet, but they're like, "Oh, you'll go airborne in route." And I'm like, "Okay." And so I also reclassed because I wanted a better job and I wanted to be intel. So I reclassed and went to Fort Bragg. I climbed the ranks pretty quickly. I made E5 in 2 years. I made E6 in 4 years, and then E7 in 7 years. I was 100% married to the Army. I gave it every single ounce of me. Obviously, my personal life suffered. It's why I've to this day never been married. But I have no regrets about that. And I would say, even though as a woman I had to work twice as hard, I would say I never felt as if I couldn't do something. I was really lucky to have incredible mentors that took me under their wing and taught me everything they knew. And I owe all of my success to them. I would say, going on more with, who I am, I wanted to be in the Army forever. I wanted to be in for 30 years. I wanted to, and it sounds crazy and like a, pipe dream, but I wanted to be the first female sergeant major of the 82nd. That's how much I love the 82nd. And that's what I wanted to do. And I could have done it. And I know I could have done it. But after my fourth deployment, so the same year I got blown up by a suicide bomber, we came back and I was a jump master. And so I facilitated other people jumping out of an aircraft. They were not perfectly good aircrafts, like people like to say, lots of times held together by duct tape or 100-mile-an-hour tape, as you like to call it.
Right.
But a lot of times I would have preferred to jump out than land in those things. But I was chasing my star for my airborne wings. And so it was my 31st jump, and it was Veterans Day weekend, which is hilarious, in 2012. And I managed to elbow my way onto another unit's jump, kind of the theme of my life. I elbow my way into everything. And I crushed my foot. I had a bad landing and I broke 4 of my 5 metatarsals in my left foot. It was incredibly painful. And the Army ended up botching the first surgery. So they put two screws, 2 pins in there. found out a few months later that they needed to redo that. And so they took everything out and then put 4 bigger screws in.
Oh,
Um, yeah. And then because I, couldn't jump anymore, and I'd been in the 82nd for 7 years, the branch manager decided it was time for me to move. And so they sent me to Fort Huachuca to be an all source intelligence analyst instructor. So basically, I was teaching 18 to 22-year-olds how to process intelligence. There are not very many things harder than that in the
I bet.
world.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
I can't imagine. Can't imagine.
Yeah. And so then, that's where I spent my last 2 years in the Army. And I ended up going through 2 more surgeries. So I had 4 surgeries in 2 years. And now I have permanent nerve damage. And so I like to say that I don't half-ass anything. So when I broke my foot, I did it real well. And it's so much to the extent where the doctors, when they first came in, they told me that I would never walk normal again and I would never run again. And so obviously that'll crush you. But I kept after the physical therapy and all of that. And I will say I do run. I am not fast, but I do run, and I wear high heels most days, just because I can.
All
And
right.
so I'm pretty proud of that. I suffer from a lot of pain, significant pain in my foot. I have permanent nerve damage. I have what's called CRPS, compartmentalized residual pain syndrome, very painful. And now I have bad arthritis in it as well. So I can feel the rain coming. And my foot does these weird spasm things. It's a whole thing. But what I'll say is I was lucky. I was lucky because I had an amazing med board counselor. I had an amazing transition in which people paid attention to me and they helped me. And they sent me out of the Army really well. And they take care of me for all the things, the bulge disc and the hearing and the TBIs that I have, and all of the things. They take really good care of me, and so I feel very, very lucky about that. I will say that that's not the case for everyone, which is unfortunate, and honestly why I even got involved in this space to begin with. When I transitioned out, I needed to finish my undergrad degree. I knew I was smart, and the Army knew I was smart, and I was intel, but in the civilian space, you need a piece of paper to tell everybody that you're smart, right? So I went back to school. I ended up with 3 degrees in 4 years, an associate's, a bachelor's, and then while I was finishing my bachelor's, I learned about this program called the Wounded Warrior Fellowship Program. And it's sponsored by the House of Representatives. And it is to get disabled veterans active on Capitol Hill and involved in government. I would say I can speak to from experience. The service members from every branch of the military have a lot of wonderful attributes to offer every community in the United States of America. Taxpayers invest a lot of money in training and things like that for service members. And I think that programs that bring out those attributes so that veterans can give back to communities is amazing. And so that's what this program did. And it taught me about policy, and it taught me about the VA. And the more I started to learn about the VA, the more kind of frustrated I got. I started to learn how complicated it was. And I started to learn how not everyone had the same transition experience depending on the installation and their rank. And I was like, well, that's not okay, because that stuff doesn't matter when you're not in the military anymore. Like, why does it matter during transition? And so that was frustrating for me. I got to hang out with a congresswoman who was also a veteran and an A-10 pilot in the Air Force, and she motivated me, and I wanted to learn more. And so I started looking at grad schools and found a policy program at Georgetown, and that's the only place I applied. And I was like, if I get in, I'm going to DC, and that's what I did. And so I moved here in 2017 with my whole life, and off to Georgetown I went. And it was incredible. It was a very humbling experience. I say Jumpmaster School was one of the difficult things I did, most difficult, but mentally, Georgetown was very, very hard. But then after that, I worked at the American Legion for a little while as a legislative associate. And then I like to say I parachuted into the Senate. So most people come in just like the military, and they start as an intern and a staff assistant and legislative aide, and they work themselves right up the chain. I didn't really do that, but I had, a lifetime of experience to bring with me. And my one liner that's very cheesy is, I wanted to be in the Army forever and take care of soldiers. It was amazing to do, and I love doing it. But now I can take care of veterans and take care of my battle buddies, who, oh, by the way, are getting ready to retire and get out, because next year would have been my 20 years. And so they're all getting ready to do that transition. And so making sure that there's policies and regulations in place for them to make it as easy as possible is really my life goal. So that's a little bit about me and who I am, and how I got here.
Thank you so much for all the work you do for veterans. It's amazing.
Well, I know it sounds cheesy, but I really do give a shit. I really do. When you look at, and I mean, you look at my portfolio is toxic exposure, homeless veterans, and transition. Like, those are the three main things. And there are three main things that I care so deeply about. The transition process is critical. When you look at people after service and you see the problems in the veteran space, and, we've got 37,000 homeless veterans across America on any given night, right? And how do they get there? Well, they likely saw some stuff in the military or went through something in the military. And then they likely had a bad transition. And all of these things kind of snowball into ultimately the worst case scenario, right? Homelessness. And it's so incredibly unfortunate, because, to serve is to, have a passion for something bigger than you. And you don't just lose that overnight. Like, something had to have happened.
Yeah.
And I believe that we can do better in the transition space. And that's not just VA, it's VA and DOD. They're a partner in this, right?
I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of preparation can be done. And I had an interesting conversation. I've been really fascinated with the suicide thing. And so I think you have to attack it from two ends, is what I've kind of seen, is that you have to suicide prevention, but you also need to see what you can do to prepare people for challenges, so that, like, some people are more resilient than others, right? Especially mentally. So some people are going to give up and break down here versus up here. So how do we get the people to break down here? How do we prepare them so that their tolerance is higher and they can be better prepared? And so I was talking to I was at a suicide prevention class for the Army, talking to the presenter, and I said, he was talking about how it came out, I want to say in 2010, is when the Army really revamped the program and they saw the numbers drop. So I said, told him about kind of my theory and what I thought. And I said, when did Army come out with MRT? And for those listening that don't know, it stands for Master Resiliency Training. And it's about helping you know how to, as well as become more resilient mentally for different challenges. And so it also came out in 2010. And so I said, do you think that one is better than the other? Or do you think it's a coincidence? Do you think, because they came out at the same time, as a coincidence the numbers went down and it looks like one did it versus the other? And he said that he thought the units that had the lowest rate of issues were ones that employed both really well. And so I wonder about that. What kind of programs can the Army do other than MRT? Because the other problem is MRT is so long, which is good, but how can you make a good abridged version so that people get the information? But also, like, a lot of people dread MRT because it's one of those, it's like a 5-day, 8-hour-a-day course. Well, suicide prevention is like a few hours. So how do we, I don't know, it's kind of open-ended question, but that's an observation I made and talking about veterans, because I see soldiers, they give up on tasks sometimes too easily. And I can see that being amplified, like, well, that's why they're not, when they get out, they don't go to the VA, because it's a task they don't know how to do. So they're kind of afraid of it, which I'm guilty of that sometimes, putting something off because I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, it's
so
complicated.
Yeah, it's
There's
very
stuff about the
complicated.
VA I learn every single day. I am not making that up. I learn something new about the VA every single day. It is so complicated.
Yeah.
Ugh, I can understand how it's frustrating for certain people, and how, like, if you've got a life going on and you've got, kids running around and you need to make money to pay the bills, like, I can understand, like, it's overwhelming.
Yeah. I don't know where I was going with all that 100%, but anyway, just thought provoking, I guess. For our soft skills, obviously, and you kind of mentioned some and being able to use resources, but what would you say are some soft skills? Because on the show, we talk about, okay, a lot of people will say, I was a plumber in the Army, so I can apply that skill to the outside world. But then there's
Yeah,
other people that say, well, I was in combat. I don't have none of that transitions. And that's where we argue, oh, but it does. Because
it
you
does.
time management, and I won't give the rest away because we're obviously asking you, but yeah, what kind
Yeah.
of soft skills did you bring to
I
this
would
thing?
say MDMP. Those of you that don't know, it's the military decision making process. And so I know that thing backwards and forwards. We used it in Intel all the time. Pretty much every single thing we did, we used MDMP. And essentially that's, receipt of the mission, mission analysis, COA development, so courses of action, to address the problem. And then you compare those, contrast those, and then you pick one, and then you plan the operation. And so I use that still most days. And to me, it fits very nicely with policy making process. And so I've been able to translate that. So receipt of the mission in my head, that is identifying a policy problem that needs addressed. And so you do that, and then, like, the mission analysis is, research, gather information, look up in US code where this is and why it is. So you look at congressional records for, remnants of congressional intent from where the law was made. And so a lot of research and that sort of thing. And you're talking to people and you're gathering information, and then you're gathering courses of action. And so what's the best way to tackle this problem? Is it a legislative fix? Is it a letter to a government agency? Is it just chatting with the department to see if they might be able to fix it through regulation? So figuring out what actually needs to happen, and comparing all of those things and figuring out what works best at the time, and briefing all of that to the senator and getting that approved, and then putting it into action. And so I would say that's a really great soft skill that I've brought with me from the military. I would say another one is briefing. As an intelligence analyst, you do a lot of briefing, and I taught a lot of soldiers how to brief. And I think briefing generals has really set me up for briefing senators. Um,
Mm,
yeah, so that's something that has really, really translated. I would say with leadership skills, I mean, I went to so many leadership courses, and just, lead from the front. That's what I think, every single day. I'm not in charge of anyone anymore, but you can influence colleagues, I feel like, in the same kind of manner. And then, just my personal life as well. Lead from the front, get out there, exercise, it's good for you, type of thing. And I still do that. Again, it's not as intense as it used to be, but I still do it. And so that's pretty cool, to be able to bring that in. And then I would say also, mission focus is something that makes me wish there were more veterans on Capitol Hill. Mission focus is something that helps to put politics aside. So when you have an overarching goal of getting something done, you're able to put everything else aside and just get it done. In the military, nobody cared what political party you belonged to, or where you were from, or what your
Mhm.
race or ethnicity or gender is. No one cares. It's, this is our mission and this is how we get it done. And the only thing anybody cared about was how hard you worked and your loyalty to the team, right? And
mm,
so I wish we had more veterans on Capitol Hill to bring more of that, because I think that Congress would be more effective. But I will say, in my world, it's something that I think is used pretty often. The VA committees oftentimes tout and are known for putting politics aside to get things done. With the Robinson Pact Act, it got political there for a little while, but it got pretty bad, but then it got way better. And the bill ended up making it through the Congress and getting signed into law. And so I think that the mission focus is what helped that kind of transpire, because everyone knew what needed to be done for veterans, so it got done. But more mission focus would be wonderful. So
Yeah. And then, so if you were to go back and give yourself advice when you're first starting out, or someone that is just now starting out or thinking about starting, what advice would you give to them or to yourself?
This is hard. So many things, right? That we would all like to tell our younger selves.
Right.
But I think that overall, to not be stubborn with education. I was so stubborn. I was so stubborn in that I don't need a piece of paper for everyone to know that I'm smart. Just, I'll prove it to you. So I would have taken advantage of educational opportunities in the military, honestly, instead of doing it after. So that's what I would tell myself.
Okay.
Go to every school you can, take advantage of that tuition assistance. Just take advantage of every single educational opportunity out there. Knowledge is power everywhere you go. And so I wish I would have taken more advantage of that.
Okay. That's a good one.
Yeah.
We haven't had one like that before, but yeah, for sure. Kind of knocking two birds out with one stone with your time. That way, when you're out, ready to move forward.
Yeah.
So you talked some about it, but how about your experience as a woman? Because it's no secret, you're kind of a minority in the Army.
Yep.
And like you said, you had to work twice as hard, because I've definitely seen where, there is an unfortunate kind of like have to prove yourself, because there's bad connotation, there's good connotation, so how did your experience go as far as all that?
Mine was wonderful, honestly. I worked in a very male dominated space, which I 98% of the time did not feel intimidated by. And obviously there's going to be times in which any person might feel intimidated, and there's a few instances in which things weren't perfect. But I would say 98% of my 12 years in the Army was extremely positive. I was so lucky to have amazing leaders that invested in me, that taught me things, that mentored me, powerful, strong women that took me under their wing. And I cannot say enough that how lucky I was. And so a lot of people think, well, not everybody can get that lucky. Well, you can if you look for it. If you're motivated and you're proactive, and you go and you seek out people who are doing what you want to do, it's kind of like you manifest it for yourself, right? If you go out and you surround yourself with success, then you yourself will be successful. And that's kind of what I did. And I would say, as a woman, there was never a time in which someone told me I couldn't do something because I was a woman. Never did that happen. And never did I think about that, honestly. I mean, there were so many instances where I was only one or two or three women and 100 males. But you learn how to deal with it, and you work hard, and it was great. It was a completely positive experience for me.
Good.
Yeah, it's good to hear. Yeah. And this kind of parallels with that. What were your biggest challenges that you faced, and then how did you overcome them?
This is a hard question for me. I don't know. I can't think of it.
We don't ask easy ones.
I honestly can't think of the challenges. I mean, obviously being deployed a lot and away from family, which obviously impacted my personal life. I
Mhm.
told you before, I've never been married, and I know that's very directly tied to the amount of my time I put into the Army. And I haven't had kids yet. The challenge, if I had to pick one, it would be balancing your professional and personal life while in the military. That was a huge challenge for me.
Okay.
I am a 100% of me person, and so I don't half-ass anything. So if I volunteered for the Army, and I told myself and the United States government that I would give my all for the country, and that's kind of where I was with it. And so I would say personal professional balance then, I guess, would be my number one challenge. Sorry, that was a
That's
really long way to get to that.
No, no.
no, yeah, you had to just process it a second. I get it. That's a good one. That's a good
Yeah.
one. That's one I kind of mentioned. We interviewed each other on a different episode, or we each have an episode, and that was one I kind of agreed with too, especially because my goal of joining the Army was to deploy,
Yeah.
but I was single when I started, and then it came to, okay, now I'm married, now we have a kid, and then it's like, hey, you're deploying, and I was like, I really want this. I guess part of it, and this is completely honest, is like, while I was torn, I didn't have a choice. So it was
Right.
like I had to go. So I kind of got what I wanted. I'm fortunate to have a great partner that we didn't really have issues. And we got through it and we moved on and we're good. But yeah, it is that balance. And then when my second kid came, I kind of thought I need to figure out how I'm going to do something else in the Army because it's gone for 2 weeks and this is rough. So finding that balance, I totally hear you on that. It's almost, I wonder sometimes if you can't so much balance it, is like sometimes you need to devote time here, sometimes you need to devote time here. So
Yeah, better time management maybe would be a way to talk about that too.
yeah, yeah. Because like
Right.
right now I'm slacking a little bit as far as reserves go. I mean, I do what I need to do, but I'm not going above and beyond. And there's times where I might slack as a husband or father a little bit. So yeah, time management.
Right. And that's the tough part because it's like, how do you kind of leave one behind and then
Mhm.
do
Yeah.
the other, be present in
Mhm.
both,
Yeah.
Yeah. Lindsay, it's 8:05. I have to start my day job. I'm sure. I'm
Yeah.
sure you have to get moving too. It's been fantastic talking to you, and I hope we'll have more to. I'm sure we already would have more to interview on in the future. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
This has
Thank
been
you so much.
amazing.
yeah,
Hey, one thing that I do want to say that I would be really mad at myself if I didn't say is I was so excited that you guys were okay with having me instead of the senator, because just the name of your organization, the Unbroken Veteran, this is something I connect with. I connect with this so hard. I am so tired of hearing the narrative of broken veteran, of everyone that gets out of the military is broken and crazy and they have all these things wrong with them. It's just not true.
yeah,
Hmm.
We have so much to offer. And I just wish that we could get past the broken narrative veteran. And so I just wanted to tell you guys, I just felt so connected to the unbroken veteran. And I just love that. And really, really appreciate that kind of thought. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so
That's awesome.
much.
Awesome to hear.
yeah, we're not all broken.
No,
Yeah,
no,
we
we're
have more to
not.
give.
Yes,
Yep.
exactly. Exactly. But thank you guys so much for this opportunity. This has been a great way to start a Friday. And I wish you all the luck with all your other interviews and really appreciate the thought that you put into this. And I think it was a great conversation.
I do too. I had a
Yeah.
great time, and thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys.
Yeah,
Thank
have a
you.
good weekend.
You too. Bye.
We thank you for listening and we hope you got something helpful out of this.
Right now, the best way to support us is to simply spread the word. If you know a fellow veteran who could use some resources to elevate their life, send them our way.
Until next time, remember to check your zeros, 5s, 10s, and 25s.